Ladies and gentlemen, to our distinguished viewers, good afternoon. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Jinky Calicoy, a STEM student from 11 Ephesians. Today, I will talk about intercultural communication. I believe how we came from the first few humans that God created. Now, it is rather interesting to think how so many of us are different from many of us. God made us in His own image, a brain, a heart. But does the image of God have many different variations? Or perhaps the appearance of all of us combined is the image of God? Ever since we found out there are many of us out there, different from one another, yet the same, we all started to think different and wonder. And the curiosity of mankind is what brought us to the mentalities and stereotypes of today. The world has never been the same, ever since. Now, as we talk to one another, we become more conscious, curious, and cautious. Would we say the right things? Would we offend somebody? What even is right? And how can we even be offensive? We start to wonder what is right and what is wrong. We oftentimes think that the best way to communicate is by sending the right message. Honesty is the best policy after all. Unfortunately, that is not always the case. Simply talking your way towards the truth isn't always the right thing to do. It would not make sense when you talk about the righteous and truthful things while being rude and offensive to everyone else. The truth hurts, and the right things are often hard to accept. But it doesn't always have to be that way. The way we change that is by doing it ourselves. Instead of simply sending the right message, we should try and release the right responses as well. Especially when we are talking about intercultural communication. Talk in a way that will make you and the people you're talking to feel good and pleased to even be talking to you. Communicate with the aim to connect, share, and understand one another. Always remember that although we're all the same, we're also different in so many ways. Especially ways where what you think is right for you is actually not for the other. Sending the right message won't be enough unless you send the message right. Sometimes our differences even go as far as the failure to even talk and exchange verbally. There is such a thing as a language barrier, and disabilities is something that people could have. Non-verbal communication is as important as verbal communication. A simple smile, a nod, a hand gesture, and many other non-verbal actions can have a huge impact, both positively or negatively, depending on the context and depending on the nature of your intercultural communication. You should always be mindful not to create miscommunication and make people misunderstand you. Because communication, even without saying a word, is just as impactful and powerful as talking with your voice. And speaking of voice, be the voice that will lead to a better form of communication and exchange of information. Be flexible, mindful, sensible, sensitive, and always have a clear and open mind. Teach yourself to adapt and know who you're talking to. And most importantly, be polite. The only way to avoid breakdowns in your communication is to make sure there will be no breakdowns in the first place. Make sure that the people you're talking to already understands you from the very first sentence down to the last period. And even if not, try your best to adapt and understand them so they can understand you better. Different races, different cultures, yet the same species of humans. The only way we can share unity and freedom is if we embrace and understand the stories behind one another. I could only hope that the next time you have talked to someone who's different, you would remember that by the end of the day, you are just the same.